With more than 34 million alarm systems protecting schools, homes, churches, and businesses, law enforcement is looking for ways to maintain alarm response when faced with tight budgets and limited resources. For law enforcement agencies across the country, the best solution for alarm issues is a program developed cooperatively by law enforcement and municipal leaders and the alarm industry.
You bring everyone together to solve the problem. You don't isolate different sections of the problem. You analyze it. You don't treat the symptoms. You get to the root of the problem. So if the root of the problem is false alarms or alarm management, you institute an alarm management policy. Then as a result, you're going to reduce your false alarms.
In 2009, for a full year, we had the ordinance in effect for the full year, and we experienced a 65% reduction in 2009. But our total calls for police service, even in other areas, seemed to go down as our false alarm calls went down.
Our reductions have been approximately 60%. We started off immediately at like 52%, and we're right hovering about 60, 61, 62% now. And I think we can do better if our registration piece update that information on those cell phone numbers and things like that and get that more seamless. And I think that's going to help us get us probably I'd like to see it to be 70, 80%. I would really get to that point.
We have some cities that's seen as much of a decline of 90% of false alarms. That's a huge, huge factor to consider when you think about the amount of time that law enforcement spends going to calls that end up being nothing, that the dog tripped the wire or you walked out and didn't activate on your way out.
There is no one single cause of false alarms, and there is a highly effective strategy to deal with the issue. The Nonprofit Security Industry Alarm Coalition, or SIAC, brings expertise and best practices from law enforcement agencies across the country and helps craft effective alarm ordinances and policies free of charge for individual municipalities and departments.
I think for the most part, the law enforcement agencies that I contact and explain to them what SIAC is, and once they see all the resources that we have and that we've got best practices that have proven results, they're very open to seeing what we can offer them. You know, it's a lot easier to take what we've already done before than reinvent the wheel.
One, it shows the ability for a chief to go out and find the resource at best cost, free. The other is to show that the industry's commitment to policing their own issues. And I think that builds another partnership level with, you know, your local alarm companies to say, hey, these are the people that are representing you in the community. And I think it builds trust amongst all the players that are concerned in this process.
We go in and we'll work with them, and as we begin to work with them, the next thing we do is have a meeting to bring in the alarm industry people for this alarm management committee the department's created. Then we begin to work on it. We look at the ordinance, the model ordinance, we begin to work. Some cases it's line for line and word for word to get it in place, because usually it's about 95% ready to go when they get it. They just fill in the blanks.
The Model Alarm Ordinance, created jointly by the alarm industry and law enforcement, requires alarm registration, new CP01 alarm panel technology engineered to reduce common user errors, fines for problem alarm sites, user education programs, two-call verification, limiting free responses to a maximum of 2 with 1 preferred, suspending response to chronic abusers, and the strict enforcement of the alarm ordinance. The best ordinances only work if they are strictly enforced. Many communities report substantial reductions in alarm calls using the model advocated by SIAC and police chiefs and sheriff's associations. Former Deputy Police Chief Glenn Mowry says alarm calls dropped in his department from just over 20% of calls to 2.4%, all thanks to modern alarm management.
And we went back and looked, and over a period of a little over 12 years, we picked up 13 full-time police officer positions. And that's like 13 new positions there to use for other things, community policing, problem-solving projects, crime prevention, and et cetera.
Because Glenn was able to come in and explain the statistics, explain the time that people spend on false alarms, maybe educating some of the chiefs that they have an issue they didn't realize that they had, or better yet, that maybe an issue they knew they had but had no idea how they might solve it. And so Glenn is able to come in and say, hey, here are some best practices that you can incorporate that we know will reduce your false alarms.
We crafted an ordinance that limited the number of free false alarms. It required registration and required alarm companies to call 2 different people before they called the police department and try to verify the alarm. And as a result, I think in the 2 years since its implementation, there's been a 65% decrease in false alarm calls.
Before there is a police dispatch, there'll be 2 calls by the alarm company to a primary phone number that they have or an alternate phone number, which is often a cell phone number for someone to see if they know of any reason why the alarm would be going off or if anyone should be in there. And usually with that enhanced call verification, you can screen out right there with just that practice alone a lot of false alarms.
This is not something that someone thought up and thinking that it may work. We'll see what happens. There's proof, and there's a record, and that's data showing that if you do this, these are the type of results that you will get. And we've had that same experience in Rock Hill.
For public safety leaders, the ability to provide a proven solution to elected officials avoids controversy and builds confidence that the department is engaging in national best practices based on the most current and effective strategies. Today, there is a growing trend of states working with SIAC and the International Association of Chiefs of Police of establishing alarm management committees to support best practices and a continuing dialogue with the alarm industry.
It's been a tremendous benefit, and we have the distinction of being actually the first state to adopt that model ordinance, and we've continued on and educate our police chiefs. We work hand in hand with our state association. We hold regionalized meetings for police chiefs. And the great thing is many police chiefs are asking specifically for direction in dealing with a pretty significant problem.
We knew we had a common denominator that we could all work toward, reducing false alarms. And so it made a lot of sense to have a collaborative effort. It has definitely been a value added, not only for our association, but I think for the citizens of the state of Tennessee, as we've pursued jointly together legislative efforts.
SIAC is the one voice of the alarm industry, representing all major segments of the industry. SIAC is law enforcement's best resource for solving alarm dispatch issues.
There are so many different entities in the alarm industry. There are all sorts of call takers and installers and monitoring companies. It's a large, well spread out industry, and SIAC tends to be a single voice that tells us what the issues are and how we can work together more effectively with the industry.
Sometimes there needs to be someone that brings groups together, and I think that's exactly what SIAC does. And they have the best interest on both sides in mind, for law enforcement and for the alarm industry, to solve the problems.
We're using the software that was developed for tracking and the model ordinance, the program, and it's been a tremendous help as far as tracking the false alarms and also the billing part and making sure that we follow through with what we need to. It's been a good resource.
Verified response or non-response is an approach a small handful of agencies have adopted over the last 10 years. With current alternative solutions that target the 10% of alarm users who account for the majority of dispatches, it is unnecessary to stop response to all alarms in your community. Surveys and community input clearly show that citizens expect sworn officer response.
One of the supervisors learned about verified alarm response. I didn't even know what it was. I guess in hindsight, and that's what I was thinking of when I walked over here, I wonder if the officer or the supervisor would have learned about enhanced call verification. At that time, we probably never even went down verified alarm response.
In the one case that we wouldn't respond and that person would be hurt, it's incomprehensible to me. I think it's bad policing to just say, the heck with it, we're not going. You know, that's contrary to all of our teachings and certainly contrary to the entire philosophy of community policing. We're here to serve and protect, not to ignore.
I think it's good to have a good rapport with the community. That way you've got a lot of community support where law enforcement's responding to their needs. I would discourage having a private security do that. I think law enforcement needs to do that. That's our job.
We work closely with our alarm industry in-state and then also with SIAC to develop a model policy and then submit that policy or recommended policy to our elected officials. And after they reviewed it, and with the joint presentation from representatives from the alarm industry, SIAC, and also the police department, they embraced that recommendation and enacted that ordinance.
Across the country, this model program has shown measurable success. 50 to 60% reductions in alarm dispatches are typical in the first year, with departments following all best practices and with strict enforcement of a model alarm ordinance. Many agencies report reductions of 80% or higher over a 2 to 3 year period. SIAC can show you how to reduce administrative costs and cover patrol costs while maintaining community support and avoiding controversy.
Step one would be this: contact SIAC. They are a nonprofit, not-for-profit organization representing not an alarm company, but the alarm industry. And they can show example after example of cities and police departments and sheriff's offices where we have worked together to make their life, the city's life, the police chief's life, the officer's life, much, much easier. That is step one.
To learn more about SIAC, visit their website at siacinc.org. For immediate assistance, call them at 972-377-9401. Thank you for your interest in SIAC.